Hey guys, my name is Andrew Perla, and this is Meditations, one of the greatest nonfiction books ever written. Meditations is basically the journal of a long dead Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius. One thing that a lot of people come away with after they've read this book is the idea that Marcus was either depressed or so negative in his worldview, so dark, that he can't have anything to teach us in the modern world. That impression can only really hold if you don't understand what Marcus was trying to do with this book. Because this is not a little notation of what his life was like. This is not as if I created a journal and was like, I met Bob for lunch. We talked about cars. This journal is full of what historian and philosopher Pierre Hadot called spiritual exercises. If you don't understand anything about these exercises, they can come off as extremely negative, as if someone is almost wishing the world to be darker than it is or needs to be. I'd like to read you a few entries from Meditations to give you an idea of the kind of things that give people the impression that Marcus was depressed or just like a really negative guy. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Look at the way the people around you behave. Even the best of them are hard to put up with, not to mention putting up with yourself in such deep darkness, such a sewer. In this one, we see him basically taking a lot of what a lot of people would consider the comforts of life and dismissing them. Like seeing roasted meat and other dishes in front of you and suddenly realizing this is a dead fish, a dead bird, a dead pig, or that this noble vintage is grape juice and the purple robes are sheep wool dyed in shellfish blood, or making love, something rubbing against your penis, a brief seizure in a little cloudy liquid. In The Inner Citadel, Pierre Hadot acknowledges that a lot of the statements that Marcus makes can be seen as pessimistic from today's point of view, but he's not actually making random statements that are pessimistic, like some guy complaining about his bad day. What he's actually doing is using philosophical techniques to remind himself of what is important. When Marcus writes, hey, when you wake up in the morning, make sure you remind yourself you're going to encounter a bunch of annoying people and bad stuff's going to happen, that's not just him randomly being pessimistic. This is a Stoic spiritual exercise called premeditatio malorum, which is highly effective in preparing you for life because you've probably lived life long enough to know that things often do not go your way. Your flight gets canceled, you have annoying coworkers, you get saddled with extra responsibilities that you didn't want. Whatever the case may be, stuff that you didn't expect goes wrong, and you have to deal with that. So if you make no plans, if you don't even consider that things might go wrong, then you're going to be left flat-footed. You might be left angry. Your whole day might be ruined. Your whole week or year might be ruined. But if you remind yourself, hey, I might have things not go my way, but if that does happen, here's how I'm going to respond, both in terms of my actions and in terms of my thought process. You can basically vaccinate yourself against these downfalls to a large degree, so you are able to bounce back a lot quicker. And that is what Marcus was doing. When he speaks negatively about things that we might glorify, he's actually doing it for a good reason, because he thinks the glorification of those things is a negative that we should correct for. So, for instance, Pierre Hadot says that this method is intended to make us rely upon our objective representations, thereby avoiding the false and conventional value judgments which people tend to emit about objects. And he quotes from Marcus, such a method of physical definition will strip things naked. It will make it clear how little value they have and will strip from them that appearance which they are so proud. So for instance, Marcus makes a comment about purple robes and the fact that the purple that is so valued in the ancient world because it was a hard to get color was actually derived from snails that were caught off the shore of North Africa and used to make this dye, which was traditionally used for kings. Now, that may be kind of an abstract thing, but think about how ridiculous it is that you can take two pairs of genes that are, for all intents and purposes, essentially the same pair of genes, and yet one could be desirable because it has a designer label on it, which somebody yearns for because they want the prestige of having the designer label. And so you kind of break it down like, look, this is some denim, some cotton. It was made in a sweatshop. Nothing really special, nothing you should be yearning for. And to lose it is not important. And so you also can do it other things like, oh, well, a building is just a building. If it burns down, it is still just a building. Though you might say, oh, it's my home. It's where I grew up. It's where my family lives. Now, if you tear things down, if you break them into their constituent parts, there is a lessening of your attachment to them. To quote Hadot, quoting Marcus, except for virtue, in that which relates to virtue, remember to get right down to the parts which you've divided and get to the point where by means of this division you despise them. Then transpose this method to the whole of life. Marcus's goal is thus to denounce false values and to see things in their naked physical reality. The same thing happens with our social striving. We want to be recognized. We want to be honored. We want to gain high office or a good job, have prestige. But Marcus notes that everything by which people set so much store in life is emptiness, putrefaction, pettiness, little dogs nipping at one another, little children who laugh as they fight and then suddenly burst into tears. Marcus, he says that he's not going to concentrate on these petty things that people value so much. Instead, he tells himself, your only joy and your only rest, let it be to pass from one action performed in service of the community to another action performed for the service of the community, together with the remembrance of God. Hadot says that Marcus is a trained orator, and he is good with imagery. He's good at evoking things, and he's good at evoking the feeling of disgust that he's kind of trying to bring out in himself. And Hadot says all images are suitable for him if they strike the imagination and make the reader conscious of the illusions and conventions of mankind. So what Marcus is doing is in his journal, he's continuously remembering what he has to remember about tearing life's ridiculousness apart, in just reminding himself, look, this is all just gross stuff that people obsess about without ever really getting down to what these obsessions really are, and I'm not going to do it. So Marcus was not depressed. He was following Stoic and philosophical convention, and he was doing it really well, which is why Meditations is so evocative a couple thousand years after it was completed. So I suggest you read Meditations. Read it with an open mind. Check out Pierre Hadot's work, particularly Philosophy as a Way of Life, and The Inner Citadel in particular talks about meditations. But both books are fantastic to help you kind of understand what Marcus was doing here. Meditations can change your life. It can really be something you can check in with again and again because there's always a new idea in there. So I hope you enjoyed this. See you later.
Hey guys, this is Andrew Perlott. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Whether you want to change the world or you're just looking to be more resilient in the face of whatever life throws at you, check out my free course, Breakthrough Week. In it, you'll get the philosophical tools that some of history's greatest men and women have used to stay calm, be more productive, and thrive in a hectic world. Check out the links in the video notes below.